Here in Mexico, it's not that common to see queer representation on films and media.
Right.
It's a kind of controversial topic. So, how do you think that the culture of the country you're shooting in affects the way your film is done? Okay, hi Ira, welcome to Mexico.
Thank you.
How's Mexico treating you?
It's so nice to be here. It's too short, but yeah, last night I went to the Cineteca.
Me too.
which is a palace, a cinema. It's really incredible place. So I was inspired.
Yeah, it's a temple, right?
Yes, yes. A temple, a cathedral, a city.
And the religion is cinema.
Yes, yes, and people show up.
Yeah.
That's the thing, you can build something like that and no one shows up. So.
Yeah. By the way, this is my first interview, so I'm kind of nervous.
Okay.
So you're gonna be my godfather of interviews.
Okay, I'm gonna take care of you.
Thank you. I'm gonna take care of you as well.
Okay.
Well, first of all, congratulations on the movie. I just saw it the other day and I really love it.
Thank you. Thanks.
One thing that I really like about your films is the way that you portray love. It's so complex, but at the same time, it's so human and so authentic. So, how's that process for you? Where does it come from?
It comes from experience and observation.
Okay.
Also, I think it's what I look for when I read a book or when I watch a movie. I look for someone having noticed the details of how complex things are. So I try to create an environment in which we never get the answers, but we get a lot of experience. Like the answers somehow would make things too small, too limited.
Okay.
So I'm interested in what people do with each other in intimate ways.
Okay, that's interesting. Here in Mexico, it's not that common to see queer representation on films and media.
Right.
It's a kind of controversial topic. So, how do you think that the culture of the country you're shooting in affects the way your film is done?
That's a good question. I think that. I live in New York City. I made this film in Paris. I feel like I live in a world in which my own relationships seem like possible.
Okay.
And I'm happy to say this film, what seems different about this film to my other work is I've often made work with gay stories and gay characters, is this film has no shame. And to me that's what seems really modern about it. These characters are not, they can't really be defined by their sexuality, but by their desire.
So you think that your characters are moved by their own interest?
Yes, and I think also it's generational. I think like in my generation there was a need to define yourself specifically. I'm gay, I'm straight, I'm lesbian, and I think now there's kind of more fluidity and I felt that was something that my actors brought to the film. Like for them, the question was not of gender, but of attraction.
Okay, that's really interesting. Speaking of your cast, I saw in an interview that you actually wrote Thomas' character specifically for France. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, and why him? He's such an amazing actor.
Yeah.
But why him? What did you see in him?
If you're watching this, go to YouTube and
Go to YouTube
and look up Franz Rogowski, Sia Chandelier.
Okay.
Which is a song by Sia that he performed in a film, karaoke scene, in a film by Michael Haneke called Happy End. And in that scene I saw a monster of cinema. Like he's everything you want. He's beautiful, he's physical, he's strong, he's funny, he's drunk. He's like loud, but he's also vulnerable. He's like everything that I want to see when I go to the movies. And I thought, I could make something interesting with this guy.
Yeah,
so,
he's such a brutal actor.
Brutal. That's really a good word. I think that he's a beast. But he's also like someone who has joy, pleasure, sense of humor. So there's like there's levels, there's layers, I would say, in what he gives to the camera.
Yeah, in this film, he's like not a really likable character, but how's working with him on set?
He's not likable, but he's compelling, right?
Okay.
Like I mean, would you agree? Like he's not someone he's someone you want to be with because he provides a lot. He's entertaining, right?
He's human, right?
He's human, but he also, as a character, does a lot of things that most of us don't do. And in some ways, isn't that what Indiana Jones does?
Yeah.
Like, it's a version of Indiana Jones.
Okay, that's interesting.
He's doing things that we might not be able to do, but we want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's part of the attraction. And I think if you think about the history of cinema, it's filled with people doing bad things that give the audience pleasure. Like that's.
Yeah, we cannot judge the characters, but we can understand them, right?
You could judge the characters. I think as a director, I don't judge the character because I think understanding people's flaws and their weaknesses and the things that they do that are not necessarily good is kind of my job. It's like being a therapist.
Okay.
Right? Like you're sitting there trying to understand. I mean, I've never been a therapist, but I think I might have been an okay therapist because I'm interested in why people do what they do in ways that is different than what they think they should do.
Well, cinema is a kind of therapy, right?
It is a kind of therapy, I think, both for the audience and for the people making the film. But I think cinema is also, I tried to make a movie that was really a film about pleasure.
Okay.
Like it's a film about, it's a very realistic film, but it's told in a way that's unreal. Like the character played by Adele Exarchopoulos, she plays an elementary school teacher, but she's dressed like Brigitte Bardot. Right? Like she's a like creature of cinema. And I think that was intentional. I also wanted there to be a lot of skin in the film, and I wanted there to be a lot of flesh, and I wanted there to be a lot of beauty. And I think that really was the pleasure of making the movie, and I think it's part of what the audience seems to receive.
Yeah, speaking of which, one thing that really caught my attention is that the intimate scenes, the sex scenes, are so real, are so authentic, but they don't feel banal. So I think that there's a difference, but can you explain the difference between intimate and banal?
Good and bad.
Okay.
Right? Like, if it's good, it's not banal. And if it's bad, it seems like it's boring. I mean, a lot of sex in movies is pretty boring. Like, you kind of think I can skip that part. But I think in this movie, also now that there's porn, like, who really needs sex in cinema it's not like the only place you're going to find these images. That being said, I think what makes this compelling in this movie is it's filled with story. Like, it's what happens in the moment to moment, in a moment of sexual intimacy, is very enlivened by these performances. You're not just there kind of going, oh, they're having sex. You're like, oh, they're having that part of sex, and oh, they're having that part of sex, and oh, now
how
they're feeling
they're
this,
having sex, right?
and how they're having sex. Which they're not having sex, but it looks like they're having sex. And there's a difference.
It's an acting, right?
Well, it's acting, but it's also physical, and actors know that. So I think there is a way in which, I mean, I think what's interesting about the specific representation of sex in this film is that the camera is in the room, but is also excluded, right? Like, the camera is a voyeur, we're there, but we're not allowed too close. They're doing something that's also private. And I think that creates this intimacy between the audience and what they're watching.
Okay.
They want more, right? They want to get closer. They want to get just a little bit around the corner, but they can't.
Yeah. Okay, that's.
It's really also, by the way, beautiful people. I mean, it helps that these three actors they're sort of unreal based on like their beauty. Let's just say it, you know.
Okay, that's really interesting. Yeah, because they are shot in a very unique way. Like, it's not only the sex parts and close-ups and kind of like that. There's a reason why.
Yes, I mean, I think I wanted to make a sexy movie, so I knew I had to make scenes. And you never know when you're shooting a sex scene whether it's going to work.
Yeah.
Because the actors do what they do, and you can't control it. So there's always this feeling of like crossing your fingers and hoping something exciting happens. And with these actors, I feel we got something exciting.
Yeah, sure. And speaking of your actors, I know that there's a difference between working with an actor that you actually wrote in the casting process
Yeah.
But what would be the main difference working with an actor that way than doing the traditional casting process?
Well, I think for me, you're casting people.
Mm-hmm.
You're not casting actors. They're either going to be good actors or bad actors, but whether they're professional actors or non-professional actors or famous people or not famous people, they're either people you're interested in
Mm-hmm.
or you're not. And I think what I try to do is create an environment in which you're watching these characters, but you're also watching these three people.
Mm-hmm.
And so in a way, it's a fictional film, but it's experienced like a documentary.
Okay.
So I have to be kind of open to what these people bring to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, Franz Rogowski is an incredible, crazy, kamikaze bike rider.
Okay.
So the last scene of the film and throughout the movie, he's on a bike riding through Paris, which weren't in the movie until I met Franz.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I'm like, oh, this is how he gets around Paris, and he's always jumping over cars and like going really fast, and this seems to be who he is. So now that's part of the movie.
Okay, that's really interesting. You know, at the beginning of the film, there's one scene where Martin tells Thomas that every time he finishes a movie, something changes.
Yes.
What changed in you when you finished shooting Passages?
Well, I remember having, you know, the making of a movie, the hardest part is that you're really alone in the responsibility to get something interesting on film. Like, everybody's working for you, and everybody just thinks it's going to happen, but every day you're there going like, it has to be something, not just nothing, it has to be powerful. And that's a very hard pressure for like 16 hours a day for weeks in a row. And so when I finished the film, I found that every night I had dreams that I had to fulfill my director's job. Like, I had to make another good scene, and it kind of didn't leave me for a couple of months.
After the shooting?
After the shooting.
Okay.
After the shooting, which I guess is a form of trauma.
Yeah. So, well, now you're distributing the film.
Yes.
The film is going.
Much easier.
It's very much easier.
Yeah.
But are you still thinking about the shooting? Like all the process that comes with it?
It's interesting. I like to think about the shooting because I like to think about what worked. In some ways, I feel like I'm a 57-year-old man who made a film that feels like my first. Every film to me, it feels a little bit like my first and my last. And I like that feeling. Like, I don't know what's going to work, and maybe I'm going to discover new things, but also I might never have a chance again. So you try to put everything into the movie. And I guess now I'm writing a script with Mauricio Zacharias, my co-writer on this and 4 other films. And I think we are aware of what worked in the making of Passages that we're interested in bringing into this new project.
So, like, 10 years ago, you did a lot of films, and every time you have one new film, you have like the new learnings.
Definitely, you learn and adapt. And I think after the pandemic, I felt like there was almost like nothing to lose. We were alive. I was making a movie. I wasn't sure I'd be able to make movies after the pandemic, and I felt a lot of freedom. But in some ways, what I had the freedom to do was think about what I did when I was really young, when I was in my 20s and my 30s.
Well, I'm in my 20s, so
yeah,
I don't understand the feeling.
You know, I think that in some ways you're just trying things out, and you don't have a right or wrong. As you get older and you kind of interact specifically with capitalism, and you think like, oh, I should be doing this, and no, this is what they're asking you to do, and this might work. You're always in conflict with that, and in some ways, it's not like I can close my eyes to capitalism. I have to think about it. But in some ways, the people who inspire me most are the people who had a radical relationship to their art. They refuse to think of their art as product.
Like content, right?
Content. It's a word. So, and I think that, like, on the other hand, you need money. So you are. But I think content implies something generic, and when you're making something, what I had the freedom to do was make something that was the opposite of generic.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm the only person who can make this with these people. Nobody else, like, we made something that no other group of people could make,
Mm-hmm.
and it's about our lives and our feelings and what we know and what we decide to share. And that's what makes it precious.
Mm. Yeah, like that's the art of directing, that it's your film, it's your vision, right?
That's right, and the less money you have, sometimes the more freedom you have, right? The more money you have, you lose freedom. Like it starts to like slip away, and I think I am still able to make movies that begin and end with me, which, by the way, is like the power of being a white male film director. like I'm Tomas, right? Like, in a way, you want to just say, shoot the guy. Like, that's also allowed. I had mixed feelings about the movie Parasite when I watched it, but I think it was actually such a brilliant, maybe it may be uncomfortable, but it's such a brilliant film. I don't understand why there's just not more like class murder happening all the time. And in some ways, this film is a form of murder. Like, my intention was to take a character like Tomas, who's an arrogant bastard, and to bring him down. That's what the movie does.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I just talked with a friend and we said that we can see ourselves in Tomas' character, because that's the point of the character, right?
I think that there's nothing interesting when a director judges their character. It's actually like, judging is the gap between understanding and what you see. And as soon as you judge, then you're actually missing lots of layers. You're too outside. I want to be inside.
Okay, that's really interesting. And last question. Now that you finished the process of making passages and it goes on movie, what are your plans in the future? What's next?
First, it goes in the theaters.
In the theaters. In the movies, I said that.
Oh, you said movies.
Yeah, sure, obviously.
Yes. What was the question?
What's next on your career? What do you want to do?
Yeah, I'm making a film in November with Benoit Shaw in New York City.
Okay.
It's a film about the photographer Peter Hujar, who Hujar. Again, look up Hujar. You'll see some incredible images. In 1974, December of 1974, Peter Hujar and his friend Linda had a conversation. Linda asked him to come over and describe what he did the day before. And he came over and she recorded this conversation between the two of them. The tape was lost, but 50 years later, someone found the transcript of the tape.
Okay.
And I'm making a film of that transcript with Benoit Shaw and an actress named Stella Schnabel. So I'm recreating December 1974 in New York City.
Okay.
And yeah, that's what I'm doing.
We're gonna be seeing.
Yeah. I'm glad you had a good experience.
Thank you for being my godfather.
Thank you. My pleasure.
And that will be all, and I hope you enjoy your stay in Mexico as well.
Thank you.